It's been just over a week since the season finale of Loki was released on Disney+, meaning that all 6 episodes of the season are now out and the season is complete. So now it is time to review it and tell you guys what I thought of the season as a whole. Here we go. Now before I start the review itself, I just want to say that this video is a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the 6 episodes on Disney+, please do yourself a favour, get off this video, go onto Disney+, and watch the 6 episodes, and then come back to this video to watch it. But if you have seen the 6 episodes, or you just don't care about spoilers, then please continue watching this video. And let's just get started with the first segment in this video, which is the good stuff, which are the things that I liked about the series. And now in this segment, I'm going to be discussing the practical things about the show I liked first, and then get into the story itself. So let's just get started with the fact that this show is comprised of a phenomenal cast, including Tom Hiddleston, Sophia Martino, Owen Wilson, Tara Wilson, Richard E. Grant, Jonathan Majors, etc. Tom Hiddleston has been a fan favourite since he first debuted in Thor, and for good reason, because he plays the charismatic side of him so well. He has such great comedic timing, but he also encapsulates the emotion and the depth of Loki, and he just has such a brilliant mind. He literally knows his character off by heart, and the Loki seminars that he gave on said, Tom is Loki, and Loki is Tom. They go both ways, and Tom kills this role once again in this series, from the emotion, from the funny jokes, everything. Amazing. And Sophia Martino, who plays Lady Loki or Enchantress or Sylvie, whatever you want to call her. She was really great in this role too. I clearly took a lot of notes based off of Tom's portrayal and tried to make it her own while still staying true to what Tom's version of the character was. And she was really great. Her banter with Tom along with Owen Wilson, their banter was great throughout the entire season. And speaking of Owen Wilson, he was great in this series as well. His banter with Loki, as I was saying just then, his interactions with Renslayer, I think her name is, yeah, they were great. And just the leader of the TVA in general, he was great, although he did whisper quite a lot, which is a little bit difficult to understand what he was saying, but that's all good. Tara Wilson, her accent for Miss Minutes was hilarious, especially in the jump scare, of course, in episode 6. Miss Minutes was a very interesting character. She had a lot of complexities and she was quite interesting to listen to. Yeah, and Tara Wilson was like perfect for that role. Richard E. Grant, I wasn't too big of a fan of the character himself, and I'll discuss this a little bit later on as to why. But he was really good in the role too. And Jonathan Majors, of course. He was extremely charismatic as Kang, or just He Who Remains, and I can't wait to see him going forward in the MCU. And as I always say too, the characters aren't complete with the actors, and likewise, and most of them are great in this show with some amazing chemistry with one another, as I was saying before, such as Loki and Mobius's friendship, platonic might I add, you know, who banter with each other and they truly do understand each other, as well as Loki and Sylvie's relationship, starting off as enemies and then really loving each other towards the end of the show. All of them were great. However, there were some exceptions, and I will discuss this later on in this video. And the next thing is, oh my god, the visuals in this show. And I know I pretty much say this in every single review, at least for the last few ones, but in this show in particular, it was insane. From the incredible color grading and purple visuals on Lamentis, the multiverse breaking free in episode 6, all of it was absolutely incredible. They killed it with the cinematography, color grading, and visuals in this show. So great job to Herron and all the visual effects artists behind the show. And lastly, in the physical aspects of the show that I liked, it has a really great soundtrack and score with the amazing main theme, Loki Green theme. As well as the incredible choir song in the last 2 episodes and stuff. Great job to Natalie Holt, the composer. Now let's get into the story itself. The show touches on some incredible themes and philosophy ideologies throughout it. In particular, the ideas of exploring your own destiny and whether or not everything is fixated and you can change what happens to you, discovering Loki's identity and why he is who he is, what makes him tick, his desire for power and why he kills, etc. Fate, belief, free will, etc. were amazing, but it still balanced that sci-fi elements in the Marvel stuff, which we love so much, including time travel, the comedy, all of that, etc. And this was particularly noticeable in the first 2 episodes, with Loki finally facing the truth and harsh reality as to why he is craving power, with him, you know, wanting attention, to always want to be in control because of his own insecurities, to having some incredible character development throughout the season, to him, not taking up the throne of the TVA in the finale, which is what he would have done at the beginning of the series after coming out of the Avengers. Seeing Loki watch what would happen if the TV didn't interfere was incredibly emotional, with great acting by Tom, and in my opinion it does, even though a lot of people would probably disagree with me on this, give a great reason as to why Loki had a complete personality change, even if it was quite sudden and overnight. Perhaps they could have done that a little bit more gradually, and maybe make him more jokey by the end of the season, not necessarily towards the middle, but nevertheless, seeing him react to the pain and suffering he caused, and Frigga's death, all that, was great, and there were some great themes throughout this entire show. Adding on to this, the overall mystery and plot was incredible. We got to explore an entirely different realm, genre, and world of which we haven't explored before in the MCU. Time travel and multiversal travel, all of that. Now, while it got very, and if not extremely confusing sometimes, like Witchcraft and WandaVision, these shows on Disney Plus have allowed us to see the MCU in an entirely new light and introduce some amazing characters and ideas that will be pivotal going forward in Phase 4. And the TVA/Kang reveal is a perfect example of this. Like, to think that the MCU's next big bad, like the Thanos level bad, was introduced in the final episode of Loki on Disney Plus, that's pretty insane to think about, and I did not think that the impact this show would be that severe. And also, we just really do have to talk about that incredible, mind-blowing ending too, which really set the stage and stake as to what is to come going forward in the MCU. The frickin' multiverse is now in action, and it is all because Sylvie stabbed a variant of Kang. Also, Mobius not knowing who Loki was, and Kang now being the leader of the TVA and having that statue and everything, all of it incredible. Made me so excited for season 2 and where all this multiverse stuff will go going forward, like the different variants of Spider-Man and No Way Home, most likely, all of that. Kang was insane, an incredible charismatic villain who made me very, very nervous, and I cannot wait to see him and his other variants going forward in the MCU, and screw you, Sylvie, for killing him. Speaking of Kang and the plot of the series, the overall sense of ambiguity and mystery as to, who is behind the curtains and pulling the strings behind the TVA was incredibly well done. Now, while at times it felt as if we were unsure as to where the story was going, and more on this later, once we do get these incredible reveals that the timekeepers were all fake and that he who remains was the main villain, seeing the TVA workers realize they were all variants who actually had lives prior, it made the overall mystery and the journey getting up to that so worthwhile. It allowed everything to feel interconnected and felt like the writers truly did have a plan, while creating the series, wanting a direct point A to point B, which is always something I love when movies and shows do, and was again done so well in this show, such as, Agatha in WandaVision, where it was revealed that she was behind everything, and like in the Flash season 5, when it was revealed that Eobard had set all these plans in motion, and Sharon revealed as the power broker, all of that. I love it when shows do that. So that's all the stuff in this category. Now let's move on to the next category in this review, which is the mixed stuff, which are the things that I didn't necessarily love about the show, but things that didn't tear down the show for me. I was just indifferent to. So this is the mixed stuff. Here we go. And now, before we get into my major complaints about the show, let's just address some minor complaints. And the first is the lack of proper representation of bisexuality and gender fluidity. Look, the fact that we got Disney to properly address Loki's sexuality was a huge step forward, but there is still a long way to go. We want them to properly show this on screen, rather than just telling us and only showing heterosexual relationships. I'm very well aware that bisexuality is not just being with a person of the same gender. However, you want Disney to actually show that it has a major point in that it can't just be edited out to make it seem like he's heterosexual, if that makes sense. And gender fluidity, obviously, was not represented well in this show, as they often refer to Loki only being a man and Sylvie as the female version, in quotation marks, of him, which is not true at all. It was most definitely not quote-unquote woke calling him this and, them giving into the SJW agenda. No way. It's literally been in Norse mythology for years. In fact, I think they could have leaned into it even more, is what I'm trying to say. Now, did it ruin the show for me, not properly representing him or the communities that he's trying to represent? No, but to the communities who were offended, their criticisms were 100% valid, and I think they should be considered. And the second point in here is Loki and Sylvie's relationship, with people claiming that it's incest or self-cest or whatever, and therefore messed up. Look, it most definitely did not ruin the show for for me. The two of them had some incredible chemistry, and it was very funny seeing, you know, Mobius mention that he was so obsessed with himself that he fell in love with himself, which I felt to be very in character for Loki too. I don't think it was incest, as the two of them weren't really siblings, nor part of the same family. They were literally the same person, and self-test isn't really a real thing, nor will ever be, and therefore I don't consider that morally wrong. I obviously do consider incest wrong. But anyway, I don't know, it's a very difficult topic to discuss, although I will say, disregarding the controversy surrounding their relationship, they did have some great chemistry and banter, and the trust that they developed for one another, only to be broken in the finale, was done very, very well. I really did enjoy their development across the episodes. Another thing that I disliked, but didn't necessarily ruin the entire show for me, was the constant undermining of Loki and the MCU stakes in general. From Loki not even using his godly powers pretty much at all, other than to make a blanket, and just using a sword to fight in the finale. Like, what was up with that? And then, you know, them using Infinity Stones as paperweight, which had a great one-liner, but then after you realize Infinity Stones, like, they're paperweights. I completely understand that they're like different versions and stuff, but you know, it's a different world and stuff. I understand that. You know, it's just like, what was the point of Infinity War then? You know, in classic Loki, completely overpowering our Loki by creating a fake Asgard, to the idea that everything that happened prior was just meant to happen and there was no free will. All of it. It felt like there was no point in what happened prior to the MCU. Look, I understand that it was to make you understand the stakes going forward, and that the Phase 4 is much larger than anything that came before it, which I completely agree. If that was their main intention, they did it successfully. However, it undermined the last 3 phases entirely. Plus also the undermining of the main character himself, through Sylvie being more powerful, even though they're literally the same character, you know, classic Loki being the one to save the day in the end, even though that scene was incredibly badass, and I guess it does make sense, given that he's much older and therefore had more experience. However, you know, I wish the main MCU Loki got his own time to actually shine, because I felt like he was constantly undermined and wasn't the main character of the show. And the final thing in this category, and it's kind of very similar to like Black Widow and WandaVision, in that the fact that we have these projects in general, considering that they're all pretty much dead, and they find a way to circumvent that death so that they can come back in some capacity. Look, I'm not against seeing more of Tom Hiddleston and Loki. I love that character and I love his portrayal. I love him so much. However, it just feels like it's kind of cheapening that death in Infinity War, which was so impactful. Out of all of the deaths that he's had, and Thanos says no resurrections this time, only for him to come back a few years later to do the same Loki stuff. I know it's not the same Loki, it's a different version, but it was really like, oh, what is the point of that? Again, what I was saying before is that they really undermine all the previous MCU events, and they do that again by bringing him back when he died last project. Again, that is not affecting the show in general, because I still enjoyed it, but just the fact that we have a show about him is a little bit questionable, but still, I did enjoy the show. So these complaints don't entirely change my opinions about the show. However, the next section does. This is the bad stuff. Here we go. And now something that has become very distinct about this show is that it wasn't necessarily focused on like big CGI battles and its incredible stunt choreography, but rather it was very exposition heavy. Even in the final episode, there wasn't this insane battle with Kang showing us how overpowered he was. However, for most of the episode, there was just an extended conversation with him about, you know, how he came to be in the multiversal war, and the decision to choose between either ruling the TVA or killing him and opening up the multiverse. Now, while I agree that there doesn't always have to be an action-heavy climax, and, you know, it is important to convey these messages to the audience, but this allowed it to be very slowly paced throughout the entire show, relying more on just telling the audience important plot points rather than showing it. Rather than telling. The first 2 episodes are literally just Mobius sitting around and talking to Loki. Again, I'm not saying that it has to have a lot of stunt choreography, but I wish that they at least showed most of the things that they're saying rather than telling them, you know what I mean? It just made it to be a little bit boring throughout the middle and a little bit of a drag to get through, because it was slowly paced as a result of them just talking. And speaking of the pacing, the direction in this show is quite strange to me. Look, it's not terrible, but Kate Herron's decisions to have some extremely extended and dragged out scenes that could be cut down significantly to move the pace faster was very noticeable and distracting. Take, for example, the first scene in episode 5, you know, when they're zooming into the afterworld or whatever, the end of time where Loki and all the other variants are. We have like a 2-minute shot just zooming into the world that all the variants are in, which really did feel pointless, and I was just like, why are we doing this? I mean, I get it, you want to set the scene, but you have like 10-second wide shots for that. You don't need a full-on 2-minute intro. Like, hurry up. And like, even in the final episode, I swear, like, Kang was just standing up and looking around the room for like 2 minutes. Like, come on, hurry up, move this along. And speaking of stuff dragging on, and I know that this is a common complaint, but you don't necessarily know what the show is building up to, nor who the main villain is, at least until the finale, which was a great episode and did a great job interconnecting everything and making everything prior worthwhile. However, that was just compensating for the poor job that the first 5 episodes did doing so. Look, don't get me wrong, the whole mystery was great, and I did feel it was important to not give away everything. You know, you do want to have those massive reveals in the finale, and you do want people to still be intrigued and theorize week after week. However, the show doesn't do enough to build up to the reveal, because it doesn't feel like that's what's central to the show, but rather something just going on the side. It doesn't feel like the whole show is about who's behind the TVA until like the last episode. Instead, it's like, okay, so they're on Lamentis, okay, and now they're in this other world and they have to defeat the monster. Is the monster the main villain? Okay, it's just, okay, where is this going? You know what I mean? Especially with 6 episodes, you have such a short time to tell a story and they don't move it fast enough. Instead of focusing on the mystery, there was a lot of filler. Look, I completely understand that we need time to, you know, learn about these new characters and develop these relationships. However, the story has to move along with the development, rather than just the development and the story not moving along with it, if that makes sense. The two have to go hand in hand. Episode 3 was completely unrelated to the other episodes, and if you skipped it, it probably wouldn't make much of a difference, to be honest. And episode 5, don't get me wrong, it was really cool seeing all the other versions of Loki, but it was completely irrelevant given the fact that it was the penultimate episode, and half of the episode is just sitting around talking about being Loki. And even like President Loki, yeah, like a 2-minute scene. What was the point of his character? He was just there. The only thing that was important, I guess, in that episode was like the Sylvie storyline, finding the void to who was controlling the TVA at the end of time, which really should have been the main storyline, and, you know, Loki, you know, being with the other Lokis being a side storyline, but, you know, whatever. And pruning them and having Loki interact with the other versions of himself was pointless. Mine is them helping him to fight the monster in front of the void. I understand that, you know, Tom Hiddleston stated that each episode was made as a standalone movie, and I appreciate the idea. That is a great premise. However, it was poorly executed and allowed the show to not really feel interconnected with one large idea connecting it, but rather felt all over the place, at least until the very last episode. And the final thing in this category is the time travel stuff. It was very confusing at times, and the idea of different variants from different timelines and Nexus events, all of it was extremely confusing. They did a great job of explaining it in the first episode, but after that I just got so lost and confused. And to the general audience and to idiots like me, you know, I am an idiot, so if you guys understood this and I probably didn't, that's probably a fault on me. However, it is my review, and so I get to say what my opinion on the show was. But yeah, to idiots like us, they could have dumbed it down a lot further. There were also a lot of plot holes and storylines that were never really paid off, such as how did they discover Loki and Sylvie next to a natural disaster, where variants were supposed to be undetectable near disasters that are supposed to happen. And we never got solid confirmation as to why the relationship between Loki and Sylvie was a Nexus event. Like, that doesn't make sense, and, you know, I don't think they properly gave a definitive answer why they took Sylvie. If they did, that's on me. Feel free to tell me in the comments if I missed any of that, but yeah, they could have made it clearer. And also, what happened to the episode 2 cliffhanger, with all of the timelines branching off by Sylvie setting off the bombs, and Loki being set up to be the one that did it? Like, it was resolved off screen in between episodes, and that made the entire cliffhanger really pointless, minus, you know, them chasing Lady Loki. A lot of these unanswered questions, I really do hope that they resolve and explain in better detail next season, although I'm hesitant, but I will give them the benefit of the doubt next season, and I definitely will tune in. But let's just get on to my conclusion of the show in general. In conclusion, Loki was a very entertaining show with a great premise and storyline, characters, acting, themes, visuals, music, and reveals. However, it had a great idea, and for parts of it, it was done very, very well, but the execution was far from flawless for the most part, and it faults on its extremely inconsistent pacing, undermining, and focus on exposition rather than showing and not telling, and the lack of stakes until the end. Nevertheless, it was still enjoyable, and I didn't necessarily dread watching the show like I did Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That was a drag to get through. It was very boring. Anyway, not a Falcon and Winter Soldier review. And I did look forward to watching it every single week, especially the finale. I was anticipating that a lot. Was it the best Disney Plus show objectively thus far? Probably, but was it my favourite subjectively? Probably not, as it didn't necessarily have the same emotional punch and hype that WandaVision did for me. But that is not saying that the show was bad at all, just far from perfect. My favourite episode for the show was either 4 or 6. You know, seeing all the Time Masters were fake with stuff was a really cool reveal. And especially in episode 6, seeing Kang. I loved Jonathan Majors and stuff. And my least favourite episode was probably either episode 1 or episode 3. So as I was saying, there were some great elements, but there also were some negative elements, which definitely dragged the show down for me. So I will give this show a 7.5 out of 10. And I encourage you all to go and watch the show and make an opinion for yourself. A lot of the things that I've said in this video, I probably will get dismissed, and I will see a lot of people that disagreeing with me and giving me better points as to why I'm wrong. I'm 100% for different opinions. Just please give your civil and respectful opinions, or just disagreements with me in the comments. Please don't attack me. But anyway, that's the end of the Loki Season 1 review. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the push notifications so you guys know when I next upload a video. My next video is my Superman and Lois season review, late August. I can't wait to do that. I love that show so much. Spoiler alert, that's what I thought of the show so far. Still got 2 episodes though, could disappoint me. Anyway, so yeah, that's the video, and I will see you guys next time. My name is Jordan, and I'm out. Bye!